Hello, everyone. Welcome. So I have released my Odin book on the internet. It's available as a digital ebook thingy. And I was just thinking that I should start with sort of showing how it looks a bit, the different variations of it, and then like if people have questions about things they read in the book or anything, then they can ask that. It's been out on itch actually a few days, but I haven't really done any videos and stuff about it. Anyways, so the book sort of looks like this, and this is what I call the HTML version, and you have this the text here and the bubbles on the side, and there's this table of contents on the side here, and as you can see, there's quite a lot of things going on here. So we have like chapters on variables and constants, on pointers, and then we go into procedures and introduction to manual memory management and stuff like that. So this book is not supposed to be sort of it's not a reference manual that it, in nitty-gritty detail goes through every piece of the language. Rather, it tries to sort of be like a easy to read intro to the language. So you sort of get eased into different parts of the language as you go, and it's sort of written in a way that it's reader friendly. And I have made it so that you don't have to know, like, the target audience is essentially, people who have some programming experience. You don't have to know like low level programming to appreciate this book. You can have programmed before, in C# or Python or something, and I still think get a lot from it. If you do come from C or C++, there will be these sort of bubbles on the side here that tell you like just how to transition over, and those are just here because I know that stuff, right? So I can do that connection. But yeah, so the book looks like this. If we can scroll down a bit, there's code and illustrations, and it tries to go through these different things in a sort of it sort of tries to explain the language by showing you things in an order so that you don't get confused. It doesn't try to talk about things we haven't seen yet too much, so it sort of tries to do that. And yeah, the idea with the book is a bit that it, the online documentation for Odin is not complete, maybe, or rather there is not that much of a friendly intro available online, and that's not on Odin really. If you look at any language, you can't go to, like, I don't think so at least, you can't go to the official C++ website and find a good way intro. It's usually, you read a book about C++, you read a book about C that someone wrote. So I think it's just like with any language really. But I try with this book to sort of bridge the gap between whatever you find on the internet combined with me having used the language for several years, and then there's a gap there, like if you find all these nuances and stuff in the language over time, and I try to put all that in. Yeah, like chat says, it's fair to say that the official documentation expects to have a bit of knowledge beforehand, and this book does too. It assumes that you know some programming, but you don't have to know any manual memory management. You see here there's an introduction to manual memory management chapter where I try to explain what it is. It looks at dynamic arrays to get started and try to explain how to use them and sort of what happens when you append items to a dynamic array and when memory is allocated. And then it goes a bit into talking about the new the new proc as well, how it allocates memory and stuff like that. And after it goes through all this dynamic memory, all this manual memory management stuff, I mean, there will be some stuff on strings that sort of requires manual memory management to talk about it in a nice way. So that's after the introduction to manual memory management. But then after that, there is like stuff like parametric polymorphism, something about package systems, something about build systems. And there's also a chapter on data-oriented design, which is sort of an introduction to it. Like just some ideas on how to get started to think about how to write code that is friendly to the CPU. So this is the HTML version of the book. This one is mainly for using on a computer. If you make it thinner, these bubbles will pop under like this. And this is, by the way, some nice fan art I found on Steam of my game that someone made on Steam. Very nice, by Bio, I think the person is called. And when it's like a bit slimmer like this, you get the contents here instead. There is also an EPUB version. And I have it running on my Kindle here, actually, the EPUB version. So it's hard to see, but yeah, there is the EPUB version on a Kindle. And currently, the book is available on Odin Book. Well, it's somewhere above here, it says odinbook.com, I think, on the screen. But this is the website I made, and currently it's available in each. And when you buy in each, you get the HTML and the EPUB version. And there's a sample to read on the website as well. And also, if you go to each, which looks funnily similar, then there is also the demo here, but that's also the sample sort of. And the book costs $19.99, $20 to buy. And yeah, so that's sort of the intro of what it is. And you get the EPUB you can put on a Kindle, you can email it to your Kindle, or you can put it on any kind of Kobo, any e-reader, or you can read it also on your phone in the Amazon app or in the Google app or stuff. There will be more shop fronts coming, like Amazon and Google Books. I think you can see this on you see here it's grayed out down here. It says Amazon. Oh, that's me. Here it says Amazon and Google Books, but yeah, that's coming soon. And yeah, so the book has been out since Friday. So, and there are some people in the chat who has already been reading it. Thank you, Jacob. Jacob has been reading it during the nights on his iPad, and people saying good job. Thank you. So, like I said, it's been out since Friday, so some people have been reading it. So if you have any questions on the content of the book or anything that's confusing, you can ask it here. We can also talk a bit about, there's some questions here now about how the writing books, like which part of the book was most difficult to write. By far, everything related to manual memory management. At some point, because if we look, we can to make this a bit wider, so we got this nice thing on the side here. If we look here, chapter 9 is called Introduction to Memory Management, Introduction to Manual Memory Management, And then after done the introduction, it sort of goes into container types that require more manual memory management, like maps. It also talks about dynamic arrays up here. Slices don't require dynamic manual memory management, but since you can allocate memory for slices explicitly and clone them, that's why it's located after there. And then you have strings, which is good to know manual memory management for something about the context. And then a chapter about making MMM, I'm going to say, because I can't say this anymore. Making manual memory management easier. So it's a chapter on that. And initially there was just I think there was one chapter on manual memory management. And then I tried to split it up into two. And then it got very strange and very hard to read, and I put it back into one again, and I was going back and forth for weeks with this stuff because it's also tackling in the intro the first chapter, what to write about first. I did write about dynamic arrays first here because it's usually the first thing people try when they try to program in any language that requires manual memory management. They want to have a growing array and put things in and stuff. That's usually their first exposure to it. How do you deallocate that memory and what actually happens when you append items to the array and stuff. So I put that first. I mean, in some ways, then the next section here is called dynamically allocated variables, where we just use the new procedure here to get memory, to allocate memory for a single sort of float in this case. You could say that that is simpler and that should be first, but I try to approach it from a viewpoint of what would people be exposed to first, and what is something that is immediately like you can recognize as, this is useful. It's useful to be able to add things to the dynamic array. It might not be as obvious why it's useful to not dynamically allocate a struct, for example. So very hard to write all that. I would say that maybe 1/3 of the writing was those 4 chapters, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That's 5 chapters. Yeah. Empathy Monster asks, is there any way to give feedback for future editions? Yeah, you can email me. My email is on my website. Well, you can email, I can write it here in the chat as well. Or you can go to my Discord server and you can either DM me your feedback, or if it's something you're comfortable with writing in the open, you can just write it in the Odin book channel on my Discord server. My Discord server, I think, is linked in the description of this video. And yeah, so that's like, if you have any feedback for future editions, like if it's small things or like things that are confusing, I might just fix it, and upload a new version. If it's like a big thing, then maybe it's for a future edition. Thank you, Justin. Bug asks, how was the collaboration between you and the proofreaders? It was good. Bill Hall, many names. He read the whole book and gave me some very good technical feedback. And that was just like, I just got a document. Here are the things that I found, and I go in and fix that. I had a friend who read it also, and that was more from a sort of a. That was more from sort of a someone who doesn't know Odin as well. My other friend, who didn't know Odin as well, who read the book and sort of came with feedback on how it felt to read it. I also got that just in a document, and then my girlfriend read it also, and she did lots of she actually printed it, so I got like nice notes on a A4 paper. But yeah, so that was mostly it. And also, since I released it on Friday, there was one person on my Discord who went through the whole book. Pythago Rascal, I think, called, who went through the whole book and gave me a nice list of things I had missed in my original proofreading. So I actually included that person in the updated one I uploaded yesterday. So I have a new proofreader since yesterday, because it was such a nice, complete list of things. It wasn't just like one-off things. It was just like gone through the whole book and made notes for me. Channel says to RetroDad that says, I do recommend each storefront since you get the HTML version, which I think is perfect for this sort of book. Yeah, so there is this the version on Amazon that will be released soon, and on Google Books will just be the ebook version, of course, since that's the only thing you can put up there. So then you will not get this HTML version. This HTML version is, very nice if you're sitting with on your computer and reading. And also, I get a much bigger cut. The royalty rate on Amazon is terrible. So if you want to support me, then you can buy on each. You can send the EPUB to your Kindle. Usually on Amazon you have this send to Kindle email address. You can send an EPUB directly to your Kindle, and it will show up. It will actually, I don't know if it will be in your account, but it will be in your Kindle. That works fine. I showed it earlier here. This is an EPUB I've sent to a Kindle with that send to Kindle email address. So yeah, works fine. But yeah, I recommend Itch just because you get more value for the money. You get the HTML version and you get the EPUB version and the but you should get it wherever you think is comfortable for you. You shouldn't like, oh, Carl gets a bit more money if I buy it on Itch instead of Amazon. Shouldn't think like that. If you want to buy it on Amazon and it's available there, then you should. It's not available yet, but will be soon. And I will make some announcements when they are. So yeah, I can just if like. This thing about writing books is, I talked to publishers about writing it first, like, getting a deal. And they were like, oh, royalty rate 10 to 15%. But that was for a printed version. And that's like, I mean, I would get 10 to 15% per book. That was just crazy. Amazon, as long as your book costs more than $10, you can only get 35%, which is like, they don't really do anything. It's just a storefront where they let you download your book to your thing. They give you 35%, which is also low. Google Books gives always 70%, which is sort of starts to be a more reasonable thing. And Itch gives 90% because, it's very indie. So, but the publishers, it was crazy how low it was. Channel says, wow, I thought you mean they get 10%. No, if you sign a book deal with a publisher to make a printed book, that's what I was discussing initially with some publishers, then you get 10 to 15%. But I mean, it's much more expensive to make a printed book, but usually the printed book is way more expensive also, like it costs, double the amount of money. It costs $40 or something instead of the printed one. So I don't know. But I'm not gonna rant too much about that. I'm just saying that it was maybe nice to do this sort of indie. Since I had this channel and all the Odin community, it actually works out pretty nicely to put it on Itch initially, and I will add these more storefronts as I go, just because I've submitted it to Amazon and Google Books, but they're slow at on Itch. I can put it up the same day. It takes a while to get through the pipeline on Amazon and Google. I also would like maybe to put it on Gumroad, but I'm emailing them to see something about their tax setup, because Gumroad would then be like Itch. You get the HTML version also, since you can upload anything there. But when you're not from the US, things seem a bit unclear to me. So I'm talking a bit to them how to do that. Let's see, what more happened here? Xdoll asks, do you think there ever will be a physical release? There's two things that need to happen for a physical release. The first thing is that Odin needs to be close to 1.0. It is quite close. I would say that what the big thing that's going to change in Odin is maybe that the core OS package, a collection of packages is gonna, the OS package is gonna get switched out. I will update, of course, when that happens, I will update the digital book, but I don't want to make a physical release if big things are going to change in the language, because of course you can make additions, but if I know it's just a few months away, then, I'll rather wait for that. So maybe close to 1.0, which is probably going to happen next year. But if I make a physical release, I also need to typeset the whole book. For those who don't know, I can take my HTML document here and press Ctrl P. Oh, this is in dark mode. Let's switch it to light mode. I can press Ctrl P and get this nice printed version here. I mean, that works, but as you see, when I have it, it's nice when it looks like this with these bubbles, on the side and everything. That's very hard to do in the when printing it, because these bubbles would get cut off sometimes because they're sort of auto layouted. I mean, so in this case, when you print it, the bubbles appear underneath, which is how it also looks in the ebook version, right? But these can still get cut off, like they do sometimes. I think, probably have some good examples somewhere. Yeah, that was a cut-off one. This one here gets cut off to the... This one here gets cut off and continues there. But at least it's a linear text, you know, like it's not like if you have the side bubbles like this and they get cut off, then you have two things that are cut off, both the sentence you're currently reading and the side bubble. So it's just too much. It's too messy. I can't do that. So I could print it like this, you know, auto layouted. But usually when you make a physical book, you typeset the whole book, which means that you take your manuscript and you put it into some kind of book design software, InDesign, Affinity Designer, something like that. And then you get the initial placement of things, and then you start manually going through page by page and maybe making sure that these bubbles like this, they are positioned in a nice place where they don't get cut off. Maybe you even have to change the text slightly to make things adjust. You go through every page and you need to make sure that you choose the correct font size from the start and everything. I read a blog by Bob Nyström who made the crafting interpreters, and he wrote that he typeset one of his whole books. Maybe it was his first book, Game Programming Patterns. He typeset the whole thing and sent it for test print, and he got it and opened it, and I noticed the font is too small. So you have to retypeset, which means go through every single page. Because if you increase the font a tiny bit, everything is off. You have to redo the whole book. You know. So that's what's needed for a physical release. Odin close to 1.0 and type manual typesetting. You can hire someone to do manual typesetting, but I would probably do it myself because I'm too picky with how things turn out. So yeah, that's that. Stefan says, congrats, any plans? Thank you. Any plans on future YouTube video content? Yeah, I mean, we'll see exactly what I will do the coming, like, the near future, because I don't want to plan too much. But I can, as a little sneak peek here, that I'm gonna try to host a Odin game jam, and I will host it on my YouTube channel within a few weeks, maybe, or a month. I haven't decided on a date yet, but I will host that, and that will be very present on the YouTube channel with streams and however I set it up. I haven't decided on the details, but keep a lookout for that at some point soon. Maybe before the end of the year, if I can fit it in somewhere or something. So that's the one thing I'm thinking of. Other than that, maybe it would be fun to do some more game dev things. Maybe it's like not really, maybe do some kind of Sokol things, you know, the Sokol libs where you do 3D, you can do some 3D rendering, maybe how to get that up running, something like that. Yeah, we'll see. I haven't planned it too much. I've been so, like, you might notice that I disappeared a bit from my YouTube channel because I was essentially crunching this book because I was running out of money. So I needed to release my book. So I was just, the last few months, but especially the last few weeks was absolutely crazy. Making video games is harder than writing books, I still think, but crunching writing is hard because when your brain is I can program when I'm still like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, or I can draw some art or something. I can usually get something done. But when your brain is tired, it's very hard to do anything productive when writing. So, yeah. Tim asks, are there any chapters that did not make the cut? I can see that there is one of futures to avoid, which is great. Are there any Odin resources for best practices in the language and or style guides? Several different questions here. Chapters that got cut. Like there is a chapter at the end here, things I did not cover, where I just mention things. Sometimes I even give a short example, but it's a few lines just. So I didn't talk about matrices and quaternions. I didn't want to talk about matrices and quaternions, but that's kind of esoteric, like it maybe doesn't belong anyway. But I mentioned them enough. I say that they are here and there's some stuff. So this chapter is just here to say, here are some things I know I did not cover, and here where you can read about them. I didn't talk about struct tags. Maybe it would be important for the JSON marshalling and stuff, because you can switch the name of the field using it. But yeah, the one thing that I wish I had time to put in was something bigger on WebAssembly. So that's all these things I don't really think is that important. That it's fine that I didn't have the matrices, quaternions, or struct tags. WebAssembly I would love to have. So if I make a new edition, maybe I'll have some WebAssembly chapter. And maybe also these deferred in, deferred out, deferred, like these special ones, these special procedures, these special attributes that you can put on procedures to make code run at scope exit and stuff. They're a bit unintuitive in how they work, so I think they would have been good to put in there. So essentially, the WASM and these deferred attributes. That's the stuff I think I would like to put in. Yeah, I think that's also maybe something about, because I talk about how to call C code, but I don't talk about how to call Odin code from other languages. But that's also because that becomes kind of like an open problem. Like, okay, which language are you using to do that? I mean, you could use C, but you could do it from any language. So it's it's like but yeah, but it's so maybe I could do a reverse one where I tell you how to do it, call Odin from C, because I already tell you how to call C from Odin. Maybe that would be good. But other than that, I'm pretty happy with it. There are some like align, like some tags like align and packed and stuff that I don't. But those are sort of power user things that, I mean, I never use them in my own code really. Yeah, so I've tried to put in, the things that I think are both take a while to learn and that are very central to the language, such as the manual memory management, and also trying, like, a thing I do with this book is that I almost always try to, whenever we look at a concept, I try to explain, like, if it gives a benefit, I try to explain why something works the way it does. For example, I have in the pointers chapters, it's not strictly related to pointers, but I talk about, like, when you fetch the 10th element of an array like this, how is it that you get, how is it, like, this looks like it fetches something of type int, right? How is it that this is able to get the pointer of the 10th element and doesn't get some kind of in-between value? Because when I was learning C, something I was afraid of was doing this kind of stuff, because it looks like this thing here has already made something of type int. So it's already some kind of in-between value. And then you have like this ampersander that, does that take fetch the address of that in-between value? It doesn't. You get the address of the 10th element, and that's due to something called addressables. But understanding that stuff, I think, is good to be more comfortable in the language. And I think also, like, to really understand dynamic arrays, I think it's very important to look in, like, to know that under the hood, a dynamic array actually is equivalent. Like, this is the format that the core library uses internally to reason about dynamic arrays. Looks like this. The type you declare is just these dynamic brackets and int for the element type here. But this is how it looks under the hood. Yeah, so yeah, I think those kind of things is something I really, because, whenever people ask questions about, how does dynamic array work? Usually when I explain that how they look underneath, they very quickly get the hang of it, rather than trying to learn all the special cases of what the different append and procedures do, and like what does delete with a dynamic array do? Well, it goes in and deallocates this field data with this allocator. But if you don't know that, and you don't know that there's an allocator field in there and stuff, everything is a bit harder. Thank you, T. T gave me $5. Thank you. Love your channel. May have missed this, but did you by any chance include easy setup instructions for Linux? No, I did not, because I don't. I'm sorry, I don't use Linux much. But I think if you haven't looked at it recently, on the Odin website, the Getting Started, that page has improved a lot. It used to be a bit hard to understand, but it's better now. So I think even for like compiling from source on Linux, the compiling Odin from source on Linux, I think those instructions are better. I hope they help. Yeah. Let's see here. What more do we have? Bye bye, Retro Dad, who must go to work. Guess. Yes, that's probably in the United States or South America or something. Let's see here. Where was I? Yeah, feature. Oh yeah, and then there was the follow-up question. Are there any Odin resources for best practices in the language? I wouldn't. Usually Odin is very sort of like, whenever you want to do something, just try to do the simplest thing you absolutely can. As for style guides, if you're just looking for like coding convention, then there is of course this page, which is just on a wiki. That's just the simple like how things are named. I think you can look in demo.odin that comes with the compiler inside the examples folder or whatever it's called. Inside the compiler folder, you have demo.odin. I think that one is good to look at just for how this is how it looks. You can look in here for how some Odin code looks, but just look also in the core collection. Like, make sure to have inside your code editor the core collection sort of drag it in, so you can jump to definitions. I can show what I mean by that. Here is some stuff. Switch to the book repository. Like, if you have like strings.builder-make, I can press F12 and I can go there and look at, okay, this thing is a because I have, you know, in this thing here I have the core folder inside the Odin folder where all these things are. I have that part of my Sublime project, so I can press F12 and jump to the definition, and I can look at, okay, what does builder make none do, and like, okay, it does all this, it seems to use a dynamic array. You know, you can just look at these things and learn from it, and you see how the style is. But generally, whenever you need to do something in Odin, just really try to do the simplest thing you can that solves the current problem you have, and then refactor your code when a new sort of when you need to improve your, like you need to add some new feature that the current code doesn't support, and refactor it. That sort of goes very well hand in hand. And try to use stuff like rely on zero is initialized, like try to minimize the amount of init procedures you need, like make sure that the zero value of integers and enums and stuff is useful. And yeah, I try to talk a bit about, like, when it comes to manual memory management, I have like this chapter here, improving your understanding, at the end of the chapter 13, like sort of, I try to summarize for the beginner a bit what to do based on what we've looked at, stuff like that. But yeah, I think you need to just practice, and you will get there. But it's a simple enough language that you can practice without like so there's a thing with Odin, right, that, like I said, I was able to add in these sort of like, for example, this thing about arrays, taking the fetching the pointer of the 10th element in an array. How does that work? I was able to add in those kind of things, and also, you know, the other thing I showed about how does dynamic arrays actually work under the hood. I was able to add in those things because Odin is a simple enough language that, like, because it's so simple, I I have room in the book to do that. You know, if the language had been a lot more complicated, then going into these kind of deep dives about why things work the way they do would make the book, you know, like if you do that in C++, you get an absolutely giant book because there's so many different parts to it. And also it would probably be confusing because that language is a bit complicated internally also. So I think it's a big strength of Odin that it is simple, because that means you can learn it, and you can learn it like deeply. And you can also write a book about it and sort of give people a good idea about how things actually work without having to spend thousands of pages on it. Or, yeah, sorry, I have to cough. This always happens when I talk for too long. I start coughing. So when I do streams where I do programming, then I don't talk as much. But when I do these Q&A streams, I've noticed that I start coughing because there's something with how I talk that annoys my own throat. So I explode. Okay, let's continue down the list here. Bug says, the general feedback of the book in Steam terms is overwhelmingly positive from what I can see. Did you expect this many people to love the book? No, it's quite overwhelming. So today I just got past 300 sales today of the book. I didn't expect that. Like, I released it on Friday. I already sold 300 copies. I mean, I didn't think that there were that many interested even in the Odin community. So I'm super overwhelmed, and people like it. General, the only, you know, people come with like, oh, there's a typo here, or this was a bit confusing. Other than that, nothing bad has been said. And I get very, very happy from that, because it's way better reception that I had hoped for, and it has sold way better than I hoped for, and just everything about it has gone way better than I hoped for. So thank you, everyone. Empathy Monster asks, is the tilde backend set in stone? I don't know. That project, I think the backend tilde itself is still in development, so I think it might be some, you know, waiting the time there to wait for that to get up to speed. But also maybe, so but for those who don't know, tilde backend is, Odin currently runs on top of LLVM, right? So which is this huge compiler infrastructure, which is very cool in some ways, because you can get stuff like address sanitizers to check for errors and stuff. But it's very slow, and like most of the compile time when you compile an Odin program is inside LLVM when it's generating the code based on your Odin. So the Odin compiler just tells LLVM, hey, can you do this? And then it just sits there for 70% of the compilation time doing its thing. So tilde backend is another compiler backend that someone is writing, and that person is also writing a C compiler, I think, that uses the tilde backend. But it's very, very fast and sort of more handmade, just like Odin compiler is. So there's been a work started to, Bill has started doing this, where he has started to make a separate backend for the Odin compiler that uses tilde instead of LLVM. But it's not done yet, both because tilde isn't done and because it needs lots of work. And I think you know, if you really like Odin, go sponsor Odin on GitHub or something, or on Patreon, like here, because if Odin gets more money, then this has actually started growing quite a lot recently. But if Odin gets more money, then they can hire someone full time, and then I think these kind of things, whatever it is that is the priority, if it's tilde or something else, can really get a push. So if you like Odin, I think you should sponsor. I'm currently not sponsoring it because I was so poor. But now I got some money from selling a book, so maybe I will become a sponsor again. I used to sponsor it, then then the economy grew dire. Shub asks, can we do web dev with Odin? There is a HTTP server, so you can, I guess, serve a web request. You make a web framework on top with the web server, but there is nothing like, there's all these cool frameworks for doing like backend stuff with other. But what you can do is you can use WebAssembly you can compile to web to run it inside a web browser as a front-end application. And like there is this Wasm OpenGL Odin Wasm, like this stuff here runs in the browser, and this is compiled into WebAssembly, and this is by the Tarnav, who is on the Odin Discord, and this uses WebGL, I think, and Wasm, and you see it's running nicely here. So it doesn't use any mscripting or anything. There's also support for WebGPU. There's an example so I will link this thing. I always like linking this thing because I think it's a great example. There's also inside here somewhere, if you go into vendor and then you go to WebGPU and into examples and into one of these folders, for example this one, here's an example of how to do I think maybe, I don't know if it's a box or a triangle or something, but with the new WebGPU stuff. And it has an example to get it running both on JavaScript and with on desktop. So you can use WebGPU as sort of your graphics API. Super cool stuff. WebGPU is still a bit experimental, doesn't work in Firefox yet, which you might notice that I'm using. It only works in Chrome, but I think very soon many browsers will support it, and I'm guessing it's going to replace WebGL. And the nice thing is it also works nicely on desktop, so you could essentially use it for everything. I don't think everybody likes that, because maybe some people don't like WebGPU. There's also the so-called libs, which you can use with Odin. They have official bindings. That's like a platform independent, cross-platform. Like here's some live samples. This is written in C probably, but you can do the same thing in Odin. Well, no, maybe you can't do I don't know if you need some scripting or anything. But anyways, Sokol is pretty nice because it creates like a generalized rendering API, so you don't have to choose Vulkan or DirectX or anything. Nice and simple, and it has official Odin bindings. Put that there as well. I'm very much behind on this chat now because I'm trying to Spiffy asks, should I focus on algorithm or learn about what I like and will like to do, like game dev? Yeah, I think you learn 10 times faster when you do something that's fun. Just do something that's fun, because when you're making, for example, like game dev, if you're making a game, then you will run into problems that you need to solve. And that will teach you to solve real problems. And you will be able to take that, like, it's not like, programming isn't really like, it's not a cookie cutter thing where you're like, oh, I have the solution for this thing, I know exactly how to do that. It's more about looking at the current problem and figuring out the unique solution for that. And you just get better at that thing no matter, I think, what you do. So just do the thing that's most fun. And just, do that. Extal asks, out of curiosity, do you mention virtual memory in the book, or is that left out as it's more related to the platform? I mention it. It's not. There's no big chapter on it, but there's two. It's mentioned twice. So, wait. I'm just gonna go to the. So I first mention it a bit when I talk about the heap allocator and stuff, but then I also talk about the growing virtual memory arena, which is a arena that you can use with an arena allocator to get a growing arena to allocate into, and that one uses virtual memory. And I explain like what reserved is and how things are committed, like first reserved and then later committed and stuff. So I explain all that, not in super depth, but I think that's the important things to understand first, that you can first reserve virtual memory, and that doesn't make the amount of memory in your computer go up, but you have a nice continuous address range because it's virtual. So it was able to just fetch a nice long space in the whole 64-bit address space. Like we just was able to fetch a whole range in the 64-bit address space. And then as the arena allocate things on using this arena allocator, it will commit parts of that. So it's only when you actually commit it that the memory usage of your program grows, and that stuff I talk a bit about, and I think it gives a good intuition for it. T says, can I reserve on Amazon? Not really. I will make a video and post everywhere when it's out there. I'm sorry. Channel asks, what parts of Odin will trip up a C programmer? Maybe the dynamic arrays that you have like a context that comes with an allocate. So you have a context that there's an allocator available everywhere, and when you append things to a dynamic array like this, don't make it a bit bigger actually. When you append thing, like you can create a dynamic array like this and then append to it, and this will allocate memory if this dynamic array needs to grow, and it might reallocate the memory if it needs to grow again and stuff like that. And that combined with the allocators that are stored inside it, I think some C programmers program exactly in this way, like they have sort of their own dynamic array stuff set up, so they would do that. But some people maybe always do a malloc and try to do everything manually. So maybe I wouldn't say there's much more magic in Odin, but there's some slight more implicit behaviors that maybe take a bit to get used to. But I don't think that would trip them up. I think Odin. So I talk about this in the start, or actually I was interviewed in the newsletter. So when you go to the Odin website, in the news, to the latest newsletter, I was interviewed, and I said there that when I was making a video game engine, right, in C, that was my job for a while. And I used stuff like, at that job, we used series initialized. We used C in a very simple way. We had support for custom allocators, temp allocators, tracking allocators. We used designated initializers a lot, and we like data-oriented design. And some of these things are a bit annoying to do in C, or you must implement them yourself and stuff. So I was doing this as my day job, and then I found Odin, and Odin sort of just perfectly implemented all these things in exactly the way that we did them at work, but with much less, like you needed to do much less in your code. You needed to do much less in your code because a lot of it, like, you don't have to implement a system, and the language is simpler, but you have all these custom allocators, temp allocators, and tracking allocators built in, and the language is also simple like C, but it's even simpler in some ways because there's less sort of you don't have headers and stuff, so there's less things to worry about, and that the whole core collection, like, that it really employs series initialized, that just makes the whole language feel very, like, if I also program in a way where I try to use the zero value as much as possible, then it all just feels very nice and like a nice uniform whole. and stuff. And also like this data-oriented design, that you have structure of arrays that you can change the memory layout of an array just by putting in some keywords. That stuff in C you usually have to do manually, and it is actually a hassle. It's not fun at all to do in C, I would say. So that is built in is great. So where was I going with this? I was going with that I don't think Odin trips up a C programmer that much. For me, I was a C programmer, and I just looked at it and was like, okay, this is all the things I want to do, but done in a much nicer and easier way. And a lot of it is already implemented and works in a way that is just beneficial to me. So, yeah. Maybe I'm the wrong person to ask about that. Thank you, Tim, who got my book. Who's going to read it over Christmas. Enjoy. Let's see here. Wolf says, hi Carl, congrats on getting the book out. Question, why are there no sets in Odin? I use map type bool as a workaround right now. Do you have a better solution? Yes, and it's in my book, but I will show you. Well, it is almost what you do, but there is a slight improvement. Because you use map type bool, so for each element you set it to true. That's what you're doing, and so you're having just a lot of you have a whole like you have all those values who take some extra memory because you had just that unnecessary bool there, right, to say that the set is in use, or that key is matched to something, right? Sorry, got a cough again. Yeah, so in my maps, in the chapter on maps here somewhere, here it is, I have making a set using a map. So what I do here is I say set of names is a map from string to empty struct. This is this is how you would type a struct without any fields, but you can do it without, like, anonymously like this. You could also give empty struct a name, but you can just put it like this. Since this takes 0 bytes of memory, since it's an empty struct, so, and the map code inside Odin has some special stuff to make sure that no memory is wasted. So if you have a 0 value type here, a type that uses 0 bytes of memory as the value on your map, it will allocate nothing for you. So this is actually just a map with keys with nothing, map to nothing. And then to add to the set, you just say, like this, equals nothing, because this is the initializer for a struct, right? So that will set it. And then you can check if Pontus in set of names. Yes, it's in there because I set it there. And then I can iterate over it. I can skip the value in the iterator, so I just get the keys, can iterate over it. And then I just use the normal delete key to remove something from the set. But but what you did was you put bool here. So you put equals true here instead. So this one, you don't do that. You just set it to empty struct, and then you delete it when you don't need it. The only thing here is that some people think this looks like they can live with all of this. Maybe, like, there's two things here, right? This might look a bit awkward. You can define a type alias that either you define a type alias for this or for the whole thing if you don't want to see this, but I think you can just learn to live with it. However, this thing might look a bit awkward, but in that case you can just make a procedure like this one, add to set. This is a polymorphic procedure that takes a set that is a map from a generic key to a struct, to an empty struct. So it's like a generic version of this. You can have any kind of type here, and then you can use this, and you can just say add to set, send in a pointer to it, and then you say the key. So in this case you would do add to set Pontus, like this, and then it will be set. So that's the only extra thing you might need, I think, if you find this ugly. So that's what I would do. And I've done this in my code. That's I would say is the official way to create a generic set. Or the best way. Channel is excited that I go into details about how things work under the hood. Yes, I think it's so. I I say something a lot in both sort of my marketing material and in the intro of the book, that I have this almost this mantra I do. And we can see it on the website actually. I say a programming language is a tool. By understanding your tools, you will become a better craftsperson. And that means that if you really understand, like if you understand how the dynamic array works underneath, then you will be able to make more informed decisions about how to use it. If you understand how the set works, then maybe you could make this set well, if you know how the map works, then you can make this set that I just showed, and you will just be able to write better code if you understand how the code works a bit under the hood, like one level down from your own code, because it's like, if you know how to both use a saw, but you know how to sharpen it, and you know how the teeth on the blade work, then you need to know how to pull it better and stuff like that. Very silly analogy, but yeah. Will of D got my book this morning, thank you. Tama says, hello, I am halfway through the book and I enjoy it very much. Thank you for making it. Thank you for buying it and enjoying it. Will it contain by any chance how Odin can be compiled to a statically linked binary? Do you mean how you can make a static library? Like you can make a lib library file that has no DLL maybe, or because if you just, or do you want to put the whole common runtime library in there? I'm not exactly sure. If you want to make a statically linked library, then you then I think I talk about that somewhere. I think I talk about it in my how to make a C library, I think. Where is that? Lost in my own book. Oh no, actually I don't talk about that there. But yeah, essentially what you need is the build mode flag. I talk a bit about it here and direct you to where you can read more about it. And I talk a bit about how you can make a DLL, but you want something else, or you want like a library or whatever you type there to get a library. But yeah, I'm not sure if that is what you're interested in. You can reply again with what it is that you want to happen. Will of D asks, will there be a physical copy? Not currently. Maybe if Odin becomes 1.0, like if I do it, I will do it, wait until Odin is 1.0, right? And then I will also need to typeset the whole book, which means to go over every page and manually sort of make sure that everything looks good in place. Like this is auto layout, it scrolls like this, but if you have a PDF, then these bubbles can end up half, they get cut. So you would need to place them. So you would need to make in a designer program, make the whole thing almost. Like lay out the whole thing, and you do it page by page. It's an enormous job. You could just print, like I talked about this a bit earlier, you can just print the whole book, of course, like this, but the print layout is not very exciting. I would like, in a physical version, I would like the bubbles on the side and a bit more, like you expect from a high quality print book, that it has something extra to it, that it's a printed book, that it makes good use of the fact that the pages are split up and that it can do interesting things like that. So I would typeset the whole book manually if I did that. And but Odin is gonna hit 1.0 probably next year, sometime, and it's my guess. I don't know. It's well, at least the don't quote me on that, by the way. The OS2 package is gonna go into is going to become the new OS package, which is the last really big thing. That's going to happen next year. So we'll see. But yeah. Thank you for becoming a member, Woolwee. Amafi says, this is perfect timing. My Kindle just died and it's got a new one. Yeah, you can get it. You can get the... so, like I said, if on odinbook.com you can... I currently only have itch, but on itch you get the EPUB. And that one you can use the email to your Kindle or send via an USB cable to it. I think you might have to convert it to some other format first if you send it over USB cable, but you can use the send to Kindle email to send it to yourself, and you can read it. I read the whole book on my Kindle. Actually, I'd proofread it once on the Kindle. You have no idea how many times I read this book. It's such a weird trance to just like, I'm just gonna start over from the beginning, like reading a book that many times. It's interesting. Rosehit says, hi bro, what are the expectations for this language? What kind of apps can be used to create? I think the best example is we go to odinlang.org and you see the biggest software that used with Odinlang is that is written in Odinlang is Django FX, and that's sort of a real-time volumetric fluid simulation that's used for games and films and stuff. It's absolutely amazing. And lots of people make video games in Odin, and Odin has almost gotten a bit of a reputation for being sort of a video game language. That I think is wrong. It's a generic language. You can make any kind of program with it. That said, maybe there are some library bindings missing, and for people who don't want to make those themselves, maybe it feels like the language is more. For those people, maybe it feels like the language is slightly more geared towards graphical applications like games and this kind of real-time volumetric fluid simulation stuff, like because lots of like all different rendering APIs and and stuff like that. But it's very easy to create your own bindings to existing C libraries. So if you have some library that you want to use that exists in C that you want to use, then you can do that. But you can also make desktop applications, for Windows and Mac and Linux. So you can do anything. It's just maybe there's some libraries missing, but you can become part of the community and try to ask them, see what is available, really, because it will grow over time. Also, there will be more and more different sort of bindings to different libraries introduced, so you can easily get up and running and do more interesting things. But there is nothing inherently stopping you from doing something in Odin that you can't do in C or even like C++. So if you think of all the different programs you can make in those languages, which is operating systems, whole Windows and Linux and stuff is written in those languages. You have programs like all your spreadsheets programs like Word and stuff, probably written in C++. You have all your video games probably written in many of them in C++. You have this web browser Firefox here that's written in a combination of C and Rust, I think. But anything you can do in any of those languages, you can do in Odin. Maybe it's just that there's still some library bindings missing. But try to engage with the community and see what can we do about that if something is missing. But there's nothing inherently stopping you. Channel asks, do you have anything in the book about GUIs? Not really. I don't really go into that specific depth. It's more about, I like teaching, like the things like manual memory management and things that people wonder, things that, like if you come from a high level language like C# to get a good introduction to that, or also if you come from C, get a good introduction to how it works in Odin to really get you up and running. But to do specifics like that, like how do I make a graphical application with a specific graphics library or something. That's a bit outside the scope of the book. That would be like a second book or something. I don't know. Name asks, is it possible to build Python modules in Odin like SciPy, NumPy? Build them in Odin? I mean, do you mean you want to re-implement them in Odin? I mean, you could call a Python code from... I mean, you could run Python from Odin and tell it to do something, I guess. But I guess you want to re-implement it, maybe. And that is possible. Like, but if you want to integrate more with Python code, maybe that's... Isn't there a... Wait a minute. Isn't there like a news... Like a super old news item on this? Calling Odin from Python. Okay, this is an old news item about how to, in Python, call some Odin code. That's not what you asked for, but yeah, it was something fired off my brain there. Amafi says that they have Calibre set up to manage EPUBs and other formats that are not supported on the Kindle. Yes, I used Calibre to test my book and to convert it to other formats. So you can convert the EPUB to Amazon formats and send it over the USB cable to your Kindle, or you can use the Kindle email address that everyone who has a Kindle gets. So you can just send an email yourself with a special Amazon email address. You can look that up. Like I think it's called send to Kindle email address. If you have a Kindle, you can just take the EPUB, drop it inside an email, just send it to that address, and then it shows up on your Kindle after a while, converted perfectly. It's a very funny system they have. It feels very like email something to yourself. Feels very much like my sort of like university solution to give myself a file from my phone to get it to my laptop, but yeah. Thomas says, I would like to have a binary with statically linked all dependencies. In C it can be done with something like ECC static. Can I do the same in Odin? I actually don't really know. So, I mean, in Odin, most libraries are statically linked. Most libraries are statically linked. Like, for example, if you have something like Raylib is a good example. Raylib actually has a flag that says if you use shared or not, and then you get this gets the statically links the whole library, and this gets the DLL version. I mean, you will notice if you have shared linked it. But I guess maybe this GCC thing here also maybe statically links some common language, like some runtime libraries, because like on Windows, for example, you have you might get some stuff from the Windows, whichever window micro, like, because you use the link. I'm not exactly sure what I haven't really run into this problem, I'm afraid. I haven't thought too much about it. So I think you should ask that in the Odin Discord, actually, because I'm not sure. So okay, so this channel says that Name wanted to, okay, Name says yes, wanted to write Python that can be called, no, Odin that can be called on Python. Yeah, well, then it was the thing I showed them. Wherever I put it. Here. Yes, you can. So Odin is portable as C. Like you can export code from Odin with a C calling convention. So that you can call it from any language, really. So that's doable. I'm not sure. Maybe this stuff here, by the way, is very old. I hope it all works. But yeah. Odd Merlin says Odin is statically linked by default. Yeah. What I'm wondering is, this is something I actually don't know. Like if on Windows, for example, you have the the MSV CRT stuff. The what's it called, the common runtime, whatever it stands for. Sometimes you compile a program and you can like, oh, you're missing this MSV CRT DLL because you don't have like some kind of C++ redistributable installed or something. That's the thing I'm uncertain about. Is all that linked in statically by default? I don't actually know that. But maybe that's it. If that's what Odd Merlin means, that it's linked statically by default, then that's how it works by default. Yeah. Anything else? Any other questions? In any case, odinbook.com. Currently only links to each. In a few days or something, you will get Amazon and Google Books on here. I will try to look at getting Gumroad because I know some people have trouble paying with card on each. There's a sample you can read there. The sample is like the first free chapter. You can just read it in your web browser like this. Yeah. And all that stuff. I don't know if there's anything more I would like to say, unless anyone has any more questions. Let's see here. Nah. Well, I think that's that then. That's that for my little Q&A about my Odin book, the first book on the Odin programming language. And yeah, if you're interested, just head to odinbook.com and check it out. And you can also hop on my Discord server if you want to talk about Odin or want to ask questions about the book. You can do that. And the link to all those things, to the book and to my Discord server and to games I've made and stuff, are in the description of this video. Lucas Blotta, okay, now I'm going to take questions again because questions are coming in. Lucas Blotta says, hi there, what is this OS2 you mentioned earlier? It's a total replacement. If you look, if you look in here, I'm going to open a folder here. If you look in Odin Core OS, there's a folder called OS2 here. This is a total re-implementation of the whole OS package. So Core OS is going to get replaced by all this because Core OS was one of the first packages that was made in Odin, and its language features has been added since it was made. So it's maybe one of the least good packages in the Core collection. So it's going to get completely replaced. But some things still work the same, but I will have to update. When it releases, I will update the book slightly to make sure that it all works fine. So that's what OS2 is. Yeah. Woolwy asks, can I somehow set the path where I want my binary to go? I think you Odin build -help, get all this stuff. So that's recommended to check out. And if you look at the top here, there's a lot of scroll. I think you write out. Let me see here. PQRST. Where is it? Yeah, out file path. So you write -out : and then the file name. Like that. So that's what you do. Then you can just choose a name so that it doesn't become the same as your folder name or something. And yeah, but that's that for today. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for all the nice comments. Thank you for checking out my book. And yeah, have a super nice day. And I will see you soon when I make more funny things on YouTube and stuff. Bye bye. Have a nice day. Where is the button?